Bitcoin has been the official currency of El Salvador for an entire year. So, how's it going? Well, here's what the media is saying.
The results have been mixed at best.
President Bukele has invested nearly $100 million of public money on Bitcoin. Most of the coins have not risen in value since being bought.
Using Bitcoin remains a challenge. At this grocery store, we held up a line for 10 minutes as the cashier waited for our payment to clear.
They said that the transaction was declined, but on my Bitcoin wallet, it showed that it had gone through.
Okay, so it doesn't look great from the start, and with the IMF telling El Salvador to ditch Bitcoin and rethink crypto, we might be tempted to end the video there. But Bitcoiners would say that's a mistake. Of course, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, wants people to rethink Bitcoin. Just last week, the International Horse Fund was telling people to rethink cars. In fact, maybe all this FUD from the lamestream media is just them fighting against a future that will make them obsolete. That's what the Bitcoiners would say. They think El Salvador is the first in a long line of dominoes. It's the first of many countries that will inevitably accept Bitcoin. These are just technical glitches. These price falls, they're just hiccups in a longer plan. But then again, Bitcoiners aren't exactly unbiased themselves. Of course, they're going to be fans of El Salvador with it becoming a crypto tax haven. Billionaires became fans of the Cayman Islands for the same reason. So yeah, I'm kind of sick of hearing from Bitcoin bros too. In fact, everyone is. Even the family members of these guys are starting to put their foot down. Here's one of the most popular Bitcoiners saying that he's actually been banned from his family's Thanksgiving, all because of Bitcoin.
So Max, it's Thanksgiving. We didn't even notice it because we're not in America. But what the hell are you doing here, even though it's Thanksgiving?
Right. Well, Simon, we didn't get invited to any of our families' Thanksgiving this year because they're so sick of us talking about Bitcoin. We tried. They hung up on us. They're just like, go away. We're sick of you.
That's why I always say you don't talk religion, politics, or global financial policies at the dinner table. You just don't do it. That, by the way, is Max Keiser. And in addition to being on the Thanksgiving do not call list, he's also one of the reasons that El Salvador planned to issue volcano bonds. This is a scheme to use geothermal energy from their volcanoes to mine Bitcoin. Of course, all that computer mining equipment costs money, so the government was going to issue bonds to pay for all that new infrastructure, but at the last minute has delayed the fundraising. So this is quite a complicated story. There's a lot of competing stakeholders who all want you to believe something different. But what I want to know is, what is the truth? What's the real situation with Bitcoin in El Salvador a year later? It's time for a deep dive on this. We're going to start at the most obvious place, price. Obviously, a lot of the conversation around Bitcoin for El Salvador is going to center around how it has performed as an asset. And here, things aren't great. El Salvador bought the dip many times, and then the dip dipped many times. They spent over $100 million on Bitcoin in total at an average price of $45,000. Bitcoin is now worth roughly $20,000, which means they've taken a 50% loss on these purchases, which is a huge waste of resources. So sure, you could say they're hodling, but this is a pretty big fail. But of course, that's not the whole story. A big reason Bitcoin sounded promising in a place like El Salvador is because a large amount of money being sent there is from overseas. This is often called remittances, and these international wire transfers cost a ton in fees for El Salvador. And the idea is that some of that money they could save if they use Bitcoin, because in theory, if Bitcoin could lower transaction fees abroad, even if it did nothing else, that could be a net win for El Salvador. But this only works if people actually use Bitcoin. And that's kind of a problem because this isn't Silicon Valley where everyone has a phone, crypto, and borderline personality disorder. This is El Salvador. 70% of their citizens don't even have a bank, much less cryptocurrency. So it might be a huge challenge for El Salvador to get its citizens to actually even use crypto in the first place. And that's what we're going to talk about next, adoption. El Salvador's plan for crypto adoption is actually pretty simple. They want their citizens to download something called Chivo, which is a crypto wallet app. And here they've been pretty successful. Chivo has 4 million downloads, and almost 70% of El Salvadorians say they know about this app. However, this is where the good news for El Salvador sort of ends, because a working paper by NBER, or this, they say that the primary interest in Chivo was driven by a $30 bonus that the government gave away with each sign-on, which, for context, minimum wage in El Salvador is only $12 a day. So downloading Chivo and getting $30 for free was the equivalent for some of working almost 3 days straight. So it's a no-brainer. Now, of course, the government would hope that people would continue to use this Chivo app well after they've spent their initial free $30. But a survey from that same paper shows that this is probably not the case. 60% of El Salvadorians said no to the question of using Chivo after the $30 bonus, and over 70% haven't loaded money onto Chivo beyond the free bonus. So a lot of people were just using it for the free handout. Not only that, even if you have Bitcoin on your app, it's hard to use in El Salvador, since a reported 80% of businesses do not accept it as legal currency, despite it being so. With all of that said, where does that leave us with our earlier question about remittances and money being sent overseas? Well, the numbers are in. Depending on who you're asking and over what time period, remittances through crypto are roughly 1.6 to 3.9% of the total value of remittances, which is not good. Because one of the key arguments for Bitcoin is that it's going to be used for this thing, right? It's going to lower international fees. But in order for that to happen, you have to use it. So the most optimistic scenario here is that people haven't figured out that it's good for that, or that more people are going to use Chivo in the future. However, a lot of reports say that El Salvadorians just don't trust Bitcoin to hold its value, which you can hardly blame them for given their experience with it. But speaking of that, holding its value, this brings us to another argument for Bitcoin, which is about banking, or more specifically, people who don't have banking. As I said earlier, the majority of people in El Salvador don't have access to financial institutions, as this reporter for CNBC explains.
70% of people in El Salvador don't have access to bank accounts. So for them, the concept of having a savings account is almost foreign. And those are the types of reasons that the government is putting forward to try to get this widespread adopted.
All right, that argument makes sense. Crypto is going to allow people without a bank to have one, and that could be really cool. However, there's still problems here, because that same survey, it turns out, shows that the people who are most likely to know about Chivo and cryptocurrency are exactly the people who don't need it. They are most likely already banked and already educated, have cell phones with internet. This is sort of the opposite of the typical profile of the unbanked you'd be theoretically targeting. So those are the main arguments for and against Bitcoin within El Salvador, and that's how it's been doing on each of those things, from price to adoption, remittances, and also access to banking. And it's been pretty rough, I have to admit. However, remember that El Salvador's decision still has some vocal supporters, which I don't want to neglect, starting with the actual El Salvadorians. Some would say that Bitcoin is a huge benefit to them because it allows them to do things like pay electric bills in a way they could never do before.
Y lo envío y ahí ya tengo pagado.
Y ya está.
Sí.
Muy fácil.
Sí.
How long, more or less, would it take you in the past to do the same thing?
En lo que voy en el bus, posiblemente una hora, tal vez una hora de espera en el puerto, tal vez unas 3 horas para poderlo pagar.
3 hours, and now it's just, boom, instant in your phone.
Sí.
Okay, look, that's honestly heartwarming, I have to admit. And if there's a silver lining here, it's people like that benefiting. But in the press, I have to say, those aren't really the people on the front lines pushing the Bitcoin narrative forward in El Salvador. That award goes to rich people who don't get invited to Thanksgiving, but do get El Salvadorian citizenship via the president himself because of volcano bond donations.
So the idea was floated, hey, you put 100,000 into these volcano bonds and you're on the fast track to citizenship or permanent residency. So I tweeted that, we're very interested in this. We would love to become Salvadorian citizens. And within a half hour, we were getting tweets back and feedback back from the president and other people in the government saying, we'll make you citizens ASAP, by the end of this year.
Okay. this finally brings me to my main question I want to leave you with, right? Because people on the Bitcoin side are going to say it's going great. People crypto are going to say, oh, it's always going terrible. But I really want to leave you with this thought. Who is the Bitcoin push benefiting? Obviously, in the press, it's all to help the poor people, right? We have to bank the unbanked. But if you actually look at what El Salvador has done, not what they say they're doing, you really have to wonder whether this is about helping poor people or if it's about helping people who are already well off. I mean, if you look at their plan to issue volcano bonds to wealthy investors, they're giving citizenship to wealthy investors. They're giving a tax haven to wealthy investors. They're planning a Bitcoin city supposedly in the shape of a Bitcoin. The thing literally looks like El Dorado. You think most of the citizens are going to be able to live there? They plan a lookout at the top of the volcano that looks like you're going to sacrifice to the Satoshi gods. I mean, who are you catering to at this point? If the answer is Thanksgiving refugees, that's fine, but at least say that and be honest about it. Because from where I'm sitting, I see most of the benefit going to the people already at the top. So anyways, that's basically my assessment of El Salvador. Next year, we'll check in again to see how it's doing, see if things have changed, because remember, it's still early. So maybe everything turns around and the Bitcoin bros are right. I don't know. I'm open to that. Either way, pump the stock. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.